To confirm, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you may record this interview.
Okay, Dr. E. Well, my name is Megan Cole, and I'm with Middle Tennessee State University. Thanks for letting me interview you. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
This interview is going to be audio recorded and video recorded, and it should only take about 15 minutes of your time. If you feel uncomfortable or you want to stop with your interview, you can do so at any point that you like.
Okay.
Let's start with my first question about the business. So could you tell me about some experiences that you've had trying to go out and get a story?
Well, I worked in television news, so a lot of what I had to do was set up interviews that were going to be on camera. And a lot of people don't want to be on camera. Sometimes it's just nervousness. They think they're going to say something stupid, or they think they're not going to look good on TV, and a lot of it is fear of that camera. So experiences, gosh, a lot of it is making phone calls, getting out on the street, knocking on doors. Stories vary. Sometimes we go and we would cover breaking news that was happening at the moment. We would go into a field where there was a plane crash or a hostage situation. Some stories were a little bit more involved, where we had to do some investigative work. But again, a lot of interacting with people, gathering information, and verifying information. Because as journalists, we have to make sure that everything is accurate, it's verified, that we've vetted things, double-checked information that we receive. So it could vary from getting a police report and going to interview PIOs, public information officers, for a police department or a sheriff's office, to going and knocking on somebody's door who just had a family member pass away, and we go in and talk to them about that person who died, to get pictures of that person, to talk about that loss. So just a lot of varied experiences. Some days I would cover a kindergarten graduation and a double murder in the same day. So I enjoyed being out in the community. I always worked in local news, so I enjoyed meeting people, meeting my neighbors, and just doing stories that were important to them and in their lives.
And speaking about some of those stories that you've done, and and the murders and things like that, what's one of the toughest stories that you've ever had to cover?
There are a few that stick with you. You as a reporter, you develop almost like a callus, like an emotional callus. Like you try to have a barrier, and you try not to let every story you do affect you. But there are some stories that they just stick with you. And one of those that really stands out to me is that there was a lovely young lady. Her name was Tara. This was in Charlotte County, Florida, and she lived in Punta Gorda. And Tara was at her family's home. The family had gone to work. Tara was still there when some gentlemen, I say gentlemen, people were murderers, when these men came to work on the septic system. They came in, did the work. Tara was never seen again. There was a missing persons report. There were posters all over of her lovely face. I can close my eyes and see her face. They looked for months. They always had suspected that these guys working on the septic system had come in to rob the house, and Tara surprised them. And they always suspected that they killed her and dumped her body somewhere. We talk about it like that, and it's such a horrible story. So months and months went by. The police would say, "Oh, we think we found the body. We think we found the body." Finally, they found her body, and it was in the woods off Burnt Store Road. I'll never forget that. We were called together to do a press conference. The mother was there. Sheriffs were there. And they confirmed it was her body, and that animals had gotten access to her body. And I remember the photographer I was working with that day, not my usual photographer, somebody else, said, "Is it true that animals tore apart her body, tore apart her bones, were chewing on her bones?" And I was mortified, because I thought, oh my God, her mother is standing there and we're asking these questions like she was just an object tossed in the woods. Finally, after many years, they did get enough evidence in that case to arrest the guy who was doing the work on the septic system that day, and finally got a conviction. They were very careful in that investigation because they wanted to get the right facts so that the conviction, would stick, so they could get him in prison where he belonged. But that story affected me so much because I interviewed her friends so many times. I interviewed her mom so many times. I interviewed family members. We talked about her all the time. And to this day, if there is someone coming to do work at my home, my husband won't let me be there, or my daughter or my son be alone in the home. And it affected us, and it stays with us. And, I'm a mom, and it it really affected me. It's one of the few, but it did stick with me. So
That's awful.
yeah.
Wow. Kind of off of that, what advice do you have for aspiring journalists who are getting into the field and preparing to see things like that?
Remember that you're human. Remember that these are real people and real people's lives. And we often do something that we wouldn't want to do ourselves. How willing would you be if somebody just walked up to you and wanted to interview you on camera? A lot of us are not willing to do that, yet every day we expect and we ask people to do that. And, I did stories about people's lives and things that affected them in the community. And I would say that to reporters, remember, you're dealing with important things. And to you, it might not be, the biggest deal. Maybe you think head lice isn't a huge issue because you've never had kids, right? But to the mother who has 3 or 4 children at home and she has to go and put this head lice stuff, it's a lot. And you just remember you're talking about people's lives. And we have to be very careful and very respectful and very responsible. But love what you do and do it for the right reasons and work really hard. Work really hard. It matters.
And what has been your biggest accomplishment as a journalist?
Gosh, I think just being that voice. I think of the amalgam of all the people and all the stories and just kind of wrapping them up and thinking about I had the privilege of being the voice when there was a dangerous intersection and my work got a stop sign put up there. I was the voice for the voiceless people who didn't have power, and we called power into question on their behalf. And it's just, I think being able to affect change, to make change in a small way in a community. I didn't make this huge, thing happen, but in a small way I made a lot of little things happen. And to me that was just so rewarding.
Awesome. And then what made you want to go into news?
Gosh, I know this sounds cheesy. I always liked to write. I liked to write stories. I had Barbies. I used to always do these little stories with my Barbies, and I loved being a writer, and I wanted to be a print journalist. I wanted to get into print. And then I had the opportunity to do some work in a TV newsroom, and I realized how powerful it was to work with video and with audio, and how many people watch TV as opposed to pick up a newspaper. And I thought this is really fun, I loved the opportunity to use video and to use audio. And so I just put that all together, and once I got into TV, I loved it. It's gonna be a challenge. You got to get the video and the sound, and you've done a little bit of that, so but it's a lot of work. But I loved telling stories, important stories, and I still do. So even after all these years, many years.
Was there a specific person that inspired you along the way that made you want to do that?
There were so many people, so many women that, writers, newspaper writers, women on network, and I would watch them and I could say, hey, she's doing it. Women can do this. She's really cool. I like her. So, specific people, gosh, I liked, so many writers, but talking about TV, I guess my main inspirations were some of the local anchors that I grew up watching. And then on the national level, like Barbara Walters, Connie Chung, Jessica Savage, who has passed away. Just watching them and being inspired. Joan London was on Good Morning America when I was in high school. Now she's doing commercials for A Place for Mom. I think about that. I'm that old. Oh my gosh. But just being able to see them doing it inspired me, and I'm like, oh, I could do that too.
And then you were speaking a lot about women. Do women have to deal with different obstacles out in the field due to their gender?
I was working professionally in the late 80s up until the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and I saw things get better for me as a woman, but early on, I think in the field, I feel like I was treated a little differently. Sometimes I think if I was interviewing powerful people, they would patronize me a little bit or be a little condescending. Sometimes they would even flirt with me and make me uncomfortable, and then when you're a woman, and sometimes they, in a sweet way, sometimes they would want to protect me from going to certain scenes or going in certain places or shielding me from things that might be uncomfortable, whereas I didn't see them doing that with my male colleagues. And, some of that I was okay with, like trying to protect me. I thought that was kind, but the flirting with I didn't appreciate. And I was like, how do I deal with this? And then I noticed people would ask my male colleagues about a story they did or something cool that they were involved with. And they would ask me about makeup and clothes. And I was like, yeah, I got this suit at Belk, but I did this great story. Do you want to hear about it? And I felt like it was different for me than it was for them. They were more interested in my appearance than they were in my substance. And, you know, I'm pretty easygoing, so I could brush it off. But I feel like it's getting better for women, but there's still a work-life balance issue for us as journalists. I still had the mommy guilt. You know, like I had children at home, and I had to work on Christmas, and I had to work on holidays, and I had to work on birthdays, and I had to miss recitals. And I had that guilt sometimes, like, man, am I a terrible mom because I'm not at this, that, or the other, you know? And I think I did that to myself, but I think society also has that pressure on women. Oh, you're away from your family. Again, I think that's getting better, so yay. But yeah, I believe it was a different experience for me as a woman.
Well, do you feel like is there anything else that you'd like to add that I didn't ask you already?
Gosh, I don't know. How do you feel about getting into this field as a woman? Do you feel like you have good mentors and good support?
I definitely have a lot of good mentors, especially with, you know, you and having other people in the College of Journalism and just media entertainment that are willing to push a little bit harder on my behalf, because I can still feel the difference between some of my male colleagues and me, and how a lot of people treat us differently whenever it comes to interviews and stuff. So I definitely have felt that and seen that, as well as, you know, I'm an intern at News Channel too, and seeing some of those MMJs, those younger women, go out and have men harassing them or yelling at them outside of the cars. That's going to happen, but it's just awful, and I hope that it gets better.
Well, let's stick together.
Well, Dr. I really appreciate you letting me interview you and getting to talk to you for a little bit. Thanks for sharing some of your life and some of your stories with me. If you have any further questions for me or anything, you have my email, and you are my thesis advisor, so we talk a lot. So everything like that too. But just thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.